Hello and welcome to the Horror Hangout. Andy Conduit-Turner here with a special episode following up from our series on FrightFest. I'm meeting with another one of the creators that had filmed multiple films in that festival this year. It's Andy Edwards. Hello, Andy. How you doing?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I am very well, thank you. We've just been discussing off mic some real life horrors and admin we're challenged with today,
Yeah.
but we're here to talk about the fun side of horror today and horror movies. We know you, of course, as a writer and director of several movies that some of our listeners will have heard. Many people who attended Fright Fest will have seen some of your work live and in person, and we will come to that shortly. But let's begin, as is tradition, with the very beginnings. What got you started as a filmmaker, and what lured you into the horror genre in particular?
Um, I think it's something I've kind of always wanted to do since I was a kid, even though I didn't necessarily know what it involved. Um, the first, my first memory, I think, is of seeing Star Wars at the cinema. Not its original release. I'm not that old, but it's slightly later, early '80s. And being obviously, fascinated as every kind of 4 and 5 year old is with it, but also getting like the making of books,
Yeah,
which pre DVD extras and everything. That was kind of how you learn about how films got made. Um, so I remember, that was kind of my first introduction into the world that the spaceships and everything weren't real. They were they were models and everything. And and there were people here making these things. And then horror in particular was kind of early teens, early to mid teenage years. And I used to go to our local video shop, rent out things like Evil Dead, the early Peter Jackson movies, and that got me into horror. But also that made me realize that this was vaguely within reach, because I think you watch Star Wars and then you see the making of, and there's hundreds and hundreds of people and millions of dollars, and then you watch Evil Dead or Bad Taste or Brain Dead, and you can see the joins, you can see how it was made. These were regular guys with their mates making these things on the weekend, and suddenly you're like, oh, this is achievable from somebody who's from Birmingham and has no connections to Hollywood at all. Um, so yeah, I loved horror for the stories and everything, but I think it was that accessibility in making me think, well, maybe this could be something that I could do, rather than people in far off distant lands in Hollywood.
yeah, completely out of reach. And I think hearing those initial films that kind of brought you into horror, you can certainly see that in as much of your work as I've been able to catch up on ahead of our discussion today. You can sort of see where the love of those genres and where the particularly some of those styles of filmmaking have come in. I would be remiss if I mentioned we have a lot of Trauma fans that listen along. I've certainly seen your name attached to. Is it a Trauma anthology a way back now?
Yes, yes, it is. So that's always nice to get a credit on a trauma movie, because obviously that's the sort of DIY punk aesthetic. Um, and yeah, that was an anthology called Grindsploitation,
Mhm.
and there's like 50 short clips. Everything's like a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. So I got a little short on there. So that was nice to have my name on a trauma movie.
Yeah, and obviously so many people working in, well, not just horror, but beyond, right? Some of our most prominent filmmakers today got their cut their teeth in trauma. So obviously in very good company.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the dream career progression, really. I guess going from Peter Jackson doing his low budget horror to Lord of the Rings, Sam Raimi going to do Spider Man, yeah, James Gunn going on to do Marvel stuff. Um, so yeah, I'd love to do a Star Wars movie or a Marvel movie at some point.
Well, they're putting a lot out. It's like jury service, I feel. You'll get the call.
Exactly. There's enough of them. There's enough of them, so I don't see why they can't give me one.
Yeah. I tell you what, we'll take a sideline. Is there any property, from the big world of infinite IPs that you'd really love to turn your hand to one day?
Um, I mean, in terms of the big ones, I Star Wars was my first love, and I'd love to have a go at that. And I've got a 5-year-old, and he's just getting into Star Wars now, so it'd be nice to make something that he could watch. Um, I, Apart from that, I'd love to do a Transformers movie.
Yes.
Transformers movie. I'd love to do one of those. I'd love to do a Warhammer movie, proper big budget um, Warhammer movie.
I feel that that isn't a
Um,
million miles away from happening. I know that they're doing more. They're certainly pushing a lot of medias in other section. I was just at Thought Bubble Comic Convention of the weekend. They have, officially licensed comic books that are all over the shop right now. So I don't think it's going to be certainly not going to be the dark and grim future of, the year 40,000 before we see an actual Warhammer movie hitting our screens, I don't think.
cool. And just in terms of putting it out into the universe, if we were just talking about horror, um, I'd love to do a Hellraiser.
Oh,
I haven't seen the new one yet. It's on my to watch list, but I think just the sort of the drop off in quality that they went through, but it's such a fascinating world of infinite possibilities, um, compared to a lot of the other longer running franchises where you've got very much these set rules and these set bad guys, and the killer is this and the killer does these things. That world of infinite possibilities of these creatures from hell and the mythology, and
yeah, there's a lot of
um,
scope there to
yeah,
take
a
in
lot of
any
scope.
number of
Yeah.
directions. Yeah, that would be an exciting one to work through. Um, so moving forward through your career, I know there's a number of shorts that you worked on individually that you released, and then do correct me if I'm wrong. Ibiza Undead 2016 is your first feature writing, directing piece, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So the shorts were very much a kind of school for me to learn. Um, I did study film at university, but that was much more kind of theoretical, and not practical. And so I had no kind of formal training. I didn't go to film school or anything. Um, so making these shorts were very much my film school. And so I made a series of shorts called House Party of the Dead. Yeah, again, obviously very kind of influenced by Romero and Raimi and that kind of thing. And literally the first one was shot in an afternoon in my flat. Um, and the zombies had ketchup on them. It did for blood. It was as cheap and cheerful as you could possibly get. And then I just kind of learnt the ropes by doing those. And then the fifth one, which I did, confusingly titled House Party of the Dead 6. We had like 50 extras, professional makeup artists. And then that's what's led me into doing the feature Ibiza Undead. I was like, this has been my film school of earning my stripes. Now let's go make a feature version.
Let's go out there and make a feature version. And I've caught up with it. For those listening now, at time of recording, at very least in the UK, it's available on Amazon Prime. You could
Mm-hmm.
click through and watch it within moments, as soon as you finish listening
Yes,
to us
it's
here, of
free
course.
on Amazon Prime. So
Yeah, and who hasn't got access to that these days? So get yourself on there. Um, have a watch through. I did in preparation for us meeting there, and very impressed. A lot of great British like icons cast wise here, especially like some of the opening shots, your villainous mastermind. Straight away people will know very, very well. Anyone who watches Peep Show certainly will see Super Hans himself on screen
yeah.
as a menacing white suited villain on Ibiza. Did you get yourself a bit of lovely time on location when you were preparing for the movie?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason why we got a good cast for it was because we were shooting in Ibiza. Um, like you say, do you want to do a low budget British zombie film? And I think most people might roll their eyes. If you say, do you want to do it in Ibiza? and you
Oh,
get paid
okay.
to go out there, then suddenly people are like, oh yeah, yeah, okay.
I'll be available, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and so yeah, Matt King, who plays Super Hans in Peep Show, yeah, that was one of those dream casting things. Huge fan of Peep Show, and trying to think of a British actor about the right age, and I was like, oh, I'd love it if he'd do it, and just contacted his agent, and he was like, yeah, I've got a few free days. I don't see why not. Um, so here's a bit of movie trivia for you. Um, if anybody's about to watch this movie, see if you can spot this. Um, on the scenes on the boat, all the reverse shots of Matt are actually me wearing the suit, his suit, because he had to leave early from the boat to go and film Paddington because he's in the first Paddington movie.
So there you go. So
Doing
you,
that. And,
yeah.
and
So
obviously they were paying him a huge amount more money, so he had to like run off from the set. So we were like, let's film all his scenes, and then we were like, let's do the reverses. He's kind of over the shoulder shots, and yeah, everyone else. We had a small crew because we were on a boat, so everyone's holding a camera or a boom or something. So I was the only one not holding anything.
so
So
get the suit
it's my
on.
shoulder. It's standing on a box because he's a good foot taller than me.
Oh, that's right.
But
I
no,
may
yeah,
well have to go back and watch this again now. See if I can
yeah.
spot you. Um,
But no, he was a dream. He was obviously somebody I loved his work, and so yeah, it was great to get him on board. We had quite a cast of kind of young, up and coming actors, so I think it was good for them obviously to work with somebody kind of who'd been there and done that.
yeah, and a fun movie to go through and watch. So phenomenal. First debut feature as well. Like I imagine everything that you've done in the shorts all of a sudden is scaled to 100 when you have an entire like 90 plus minutes to get in there, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you've made a short, you've kind of done everything that you need to do. You just need to get up and do that for 3 weeks and every day, and that's where it becomes an endurance. Because if anybody listens made shorts, I'm sure there's lots of people who have. Maybe you're doing 2 days and you've got that adrenaline up, and you're like, yes, we're going to make this. And then, but yeah, it's just keeping that up.
You've got to maintain that energy for that
Maintain that
much
energy.
longer.
And when everybody's in Ibiza, with a young cast and a young crew who maybe have gone out at night and haven't slept.
Yeah. Come on, we're losing the light. Chop chop, everybody.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's like making a film on a Club 1830s holiday. Because yeah, obviously we were all staying out there in villas, and all of the cast and most of the crew were in their 20s, and yeah, it was the vibe we wanted, but it was quite a hectic place to make a movie.
I can imagine.
Because before going, I was like, I wonder why nobody shot much out there. I think there was like Kevin and Perry Go Large, and I think that was the only movie I could think that was set out there. And obviously, a lot of British people go there. It's a very British rite of passage to go to Ibiza. And then we got there and realised that the entire island is set up for one thing and one thing alone, which is just partying. And there's no infrastructure. At the time, it might have changed now, but there was no infrastructure for film. So any lights, any cameras, all had to come from either the UK or from mainland Spain. So
Oh well, fantastic! Like you pulled it off. Logistical challenges and all. You got through it, which has led, of course, to more. And where we come to the current day, obviously we had a couple of things that feature your talents were in FrightFest this year. Um, I think secondarily we might touch on the Ghost of Monday, which you're one of the writing room on that, correct?
one of
Yeah.
many writers on that one. Yeah, so a small part of that one.
Yeah, but primarily you had one of the sections of Midnight Peepshow, which is a horror anthology, a British horror anthology film that came out of FrightFest as well. Um, how was your experience there? Tell us about your segment. Tell us what people can expect if they still haven't checked it out yet.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, still doing the festival circuit at the moment. It's playing, I think, the Northeast Film Festival sometime this month, and then Horror on Sea, which is January. Maybe a few other appearances soon. But so it's only available at festivals at the moment. Obviously, be coming to streaming soon. So it's a horror anthology. There are 3 sections and a wraparound story. The wraparound story concerns a down on his luck businessman who stumbles across this old Soho peep show. And when he goes in and he looks through the little slots, instead of seeing a naked girl, this is our way into each of the stories. So he sees kind of 3 tales of terror through each window, and the last one kind of ties into him. And it's very much kind of a throwback to the days of Amicus, in that a lot of modern horror anthologies are made by disparate groups of directors in different countries, and they all get put together. This was shot consecutively, the same crew. We just swapped out directors.
Okay.
So that was the only thing that changed on each. So we had the same DOP. So it all kind of looks and feels consistent. And the stories were written to interlink as well. So, the hope is, you can enjoy each story, but it is a cohesive movie.
Yeah, you have a consistent experience throughout seeing it. I saw it when we were going through our FrightFest materials. It's another I think a really strong cohort of movies this year. Really, really diverse pool and a lot of fantastic movies. I enjoyed Midnight Peepshow a lot. It was entertaining. Not just saying it because you're here, Andy. I did like your section the most, I think. But yeah.
Well, my section is it's the sort of light relief, I guess, in the midst of it, because the kind of the concept was devised by one of the other directors, Errol Anthony Hales, who's also the producer. So he came up with the idea, got Jake West on board, who a lot of people will know from his work. And so they wrote the script for everything together, bar the middle section. And they had a few ideas and just nothing was gelling for them. And then they'd seen my movie graphic designs. And they were like, "Oh, you could be good for filling in the middle section." And so I read the rest of the script, and it's quite dark.
Yeah.
It's fairly heavy stuff. So I was like, okay, I think what it needs, especially as it's going to be the middle section, is something a bit more sort of blackly comic.
Yeah.
So that was my section. So I wrote that specifically to fit in tonally with the rest of the movie and give you a few laughs in the middle before.
And you're right, it has got some nice dark comedy to it in that midsection. And straight away, again, having since seen that, gone and experienced some of your other work, it brings that similar energy that I think we can see from your writing in particular, that has kind of this darkly comedic edge to it as well. So worth checking out if anyone hasn't already. As Andy says, available on streaming soon in the future. We'll be sure to share when we know when.
Yeah, there's deals are still being struck as we speak. But yes, it's got a couple more festivals to run.
It'll turn up, and then obviously people are attending festivals all over the world, so keep a lookout for it on the circuit.
The plan, I know the plan is, if it goes well, is to turn it into a franchise. So there'll be a Midnight Peepshow 2 with different bunch of directors.
So we're seeing I think we're seeing a real resurgence of the anthology. Not that it ever truly entirely went away, but between the successes of things like VHS that we've had, they on their 5th installment now. It's and I'm a big fan of an anthology back from the Creepshow days. So I can't get enough personally. They can continue to bring them out as long as they wish.
Totally. Yeah, I love one. I love them as well.
So what's coming up next? I know you're currently in the middle of filming some pickups for your next project. Is that correct?
Yes. So that's called Punch, and that's a seaside set slasher movie featuring an evil Mr. Punch from Punch and Judy, and that is we shot that early this year in Hastings. We did a couple of pickups in Clacton on Sea. And we've got one stunt shot to finish off, which we are shooting next week. And that's, yeah, I think people should hopefully like that one. It's, kind of teenagers being killed by the sea, similar to Ibiza Undead, but much less glamorous.
Yeah, sea's a little
Um,
colder.
yeah, a lot colder. So yeah, no swimwear in this one. It's set in a seaside town in winter. So
Nice.
it's all about that kind of melancholy vibe of a seaside town in winter, and then you. So it's the idea is it's meant to be the most British location you could possibly think of, and then you kind of bring this American style slasher plot into that,
Great.
because we don't have a UK slasher here, a franchise. We've done a few movies here, but there's no Freddy or Jason or whoever that's British.
Well, I
And
shall keep my fingers crossed then to see
we,
if
we should
Mr.
have
Punch
one.
is our
And Mr.
homegrown
Mr. Punch is
slasher.
going to be the one.
Right. Well, be sure to share with us as that is progressing or it's coming out. We'd love to have you on to talk about that. Perhaps do
Yeah,
an episode
definitely.
even. Yeah, that would be fantastic. Um, in the few moments that we have left, Andy, I don't want to take up too much of your afternoon, but let's ask you some other questions. I know you've come a long way in horror movies. What one piece of advice would you give to someone who was starting an independent horror creating now?
I mean, it's a really exciting time. There's a lot of really talented people out there. So it's in a way a really good time, and obviously horror is doing really well at the box office. So yeah, just get out there and make your stuff. Really, um, the lot of the barriers in kind of sense of cost is still expensive, but obviously it's nowhere near as expensive as it used to be. Are coming down. So yeah, get out there and make that. And it is a marathon, not a sprint. Um, yeah, you have to keep at it. Have some staying power, I think.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So, thank you very much, Andy, for your time today. Thank you
No,
to
thank
the
you.
listeners. If you enjoyed the show, you can like and subscribe on all of your usual podcast platforms. We'll see you again for another episode soon. For now, goodbye. Keep watching horror movies. Bye for now, everybody.